Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. Today, we're going to talk about something that's been getting players of Cronos the New Dawn really excited, and that's the brand new update 1.1, also known as version 1.005. If you've been following this game closely, you already know that it launched with a ton of potential, but also had its fair share of bugs, glitches, and frustrating little issues that could pull you out of the experience. Well, the developers have been paying attention, and they've just rolled out a patch that really changes things in a big way. And instead of just reading through boring patch notes, I want to break it all down for you in a way that feels like we're hanging out, going over what's new, what's fixed, and what kind of quality of life improvements we can expect moving forward. This is going to be a long breakdown because there's a lot to unpack here, and I want to go into detail on how each change actually affects the gameplay, especially if you've been running into these problems firsthand. So first off, let's talk about the critical issues. If you've played through the game and reached the part where you interact with the warden, you may have experienced a crash during that optional dialogue. And honestly, there's nothing more frustrating than building up to a cutscene, being ready for some lore or character development, and suddenly, boom, the game just collapses on you. This patch addresses that directly, so now you should be able to go through those conversations without worrying about losing progress. It might seem like a small fix, but for a story-driven game like Cronos, where immersion is everything, stability in these narrative moments is a big deal. Another huge improvement is in the area of save compatibility. There was this really annoying issue with the church bell tower barricade that just wouldn't open properly in certain saves. Imagine you've been exploring, solving puzzles, getting all the way to that point, only to find yourself stuck because the game simply refuses to let you progress. That kind of bug can literally make or break someone's experience, especially if they don't want to restart from scratch. With this update, that problem has been solved, so if you were one of the players stuck there, now you can go back and continue your adventure. Speaking of the church area, there was also a save-related issue with the church doors puzzle. Basically, after solving it, your progress could get blocked if the save system bugged out. That's no longer the case. It's the kind of fix that ensures the pacing of the game doesn't get ruined, because no one wants to replay the same sequence over and over again just to bypass a glitch. Now, for players using the Japanese translation, you'll definitely notice a smoother experience. There were some pretty nasty freezes when listening to echoes, travelogues, or audio logs, and that was really immersion breaking. Imagine you're listening to this emotional recording or backstory detail, and suddenly the game just locks up. This patch fixes that, which shows that the devs are serious about making sure localization isn't just an afterthought, but actually works seamlessly across different languages. Another fix that's pretty interesting is the one about the Pathfinder NPC. There was a situation where during a boss fight, this character would just disappear, and even when you reloaded your game, they wouldn't come back. That's been fixed, and it matters because NPCs in Cronos add so much depth to the atmosphere. Losing one, especially during a boss encounter, doesn't just break the game mechanically, but also robs you of part of the experience. Moving on to Edward's apartment, players found themselves stuck when interacting with the elevator panel if they saved and loaded multiple times in the area. That bug was essentially locking people out of progressing the story, which again is the type of issue that can be extremely frustrating. With the new patch, you won't have to worry about that anymore. Autosaving also got some love in this update. There were zones where autosaves were missing entirely, like entering the basement in the apartment zone, past, or after beating the boss in the apartment zone, future. Imagine beating a tough boss only to realize the game didn't autosave, and if you happen to die later, you have to replay that entire segment. That's been addressed, making progression way smoother and safer. On the graphical side, the update fixes some artifacts that appeared when switching from very low graphic settings to higher presets. If you've ever messed with your settings mid-game, you might have noticed weird visual glitches. Those are gone now. And while we're on the topic of visuals, enemies that used to get stuck when there wasn't a valid path to the player will now behave properly, which not only makes the game feel more polished, but also prevents combat from turning into an awkward waiting game. Now let's move on to the smaller, but still really meaningful fixes. Achievements have been an area of frustration for a lot of players. For example, weapons you bought at the workstation weren't counting toward the achievement called the Boon of the Relics. That's fixed now, so all the effort you put into collecting those weapons won't go unrewarded. The Pathfinder achievement also had issues if you skipped the church cutscene too early, like within 15 seconds, but now it unlocks as it should under those conditions. The Pyromaniac achievement also got fixed, and I know a lot of completionists will be thrilled about that one. Nobody wants to do all the work for an achievement only to find it bugged and locked forever. Another fix worth mentioning is the removal of hidden fear traps that were stuck under the church zone floor. These traps weren't even visible, so they would just trigger unfairly, making gameplay feel cheap. Now they're gone, so the challenge is back to being fair and skill-based. If you're someone who jumped into New Game Plus, you probably noticed that the arbalest weapon image was missing in the shop. That's been corrected, so the UI feels cleaner and more reliable. Also, there was this empty pop-up that appeared when you launched the game, saying new content unlocked, with nothing actually there. That bug is gone, and it's one of those small things that doesn't break the game, but definitely feels sloppy, so it's nice to see it polished. For HDR users, you'll appreciate this fix. The pause menu used to show visible banding, which is not what you want on a high-end display. That's been smoothed out, and on top of that, the HDR calibration screen is now consistent, whether you're coming from the main menu or adjusting it from the pause menu. That makes the overall visual experience much more reliable. Controls also got a tweak. If you bound the flamethrower or torch to the F key, the game wasn't showing it correctly. That's now fixed. And while it may sound like a minor thing, anyone who relies on custom key bindings knows how important it is to have accurate on-screen prompts. And here's a small but oddly satisfying one. Loot crates near Gendrish's store wouldn't break with melee attacks. You'd have to go out of your way to deal with them. That's been corrected, so now they behave like every other crate in the game. It's consistency like that which makes the world feel more believable. Beyond fixes, we've also got some really good quality of life improvements. For example, there's now an extra autosave before the brothers' cutscene in the factory. That's a pretty important narrative moment, and losing progress right before it could be heartbreaking. This change ensures you're covered. There's also a new informational screen at the start of New Game Plus that explains how equipment storage works. A lot of players were confused about the stash system when starting fresh, so this is one of those small touches that actually makes the whole experience more approachable. Even the EULA scrolling before the main menu has been cleaned up. They removed unnecessary markers and made it easier to get through. Now, is that the kind of change that revolutionizes gameplay? Not really, but it does reflect a developer that cares about tightening up even the tiniest details. Now let's talk performance. This update isn't just about fixing bugs, it also improves how the game runs. Performance boosts have been rolled out across different hardware setups, and if you've been struggling with frame drops, you'll likely notice smoother gameplay now. Whether you play with ray tracing enabled or not, the frame rates have been improved and the stuttering in certain areas has been reduced. That's huge, because when you're in a tense moment, fighting off enemies, or just exploring a moody environment, the last thing you want is performance hiccups pulling you out of the immersion. And stability overall has been given a bump, so you should be experiencing fewer crashes and weird technical hiccups. This update feels like the devs have gone through the game with a fine-tooth comb, addressing issues both big and small. Now, if you think about the bigger picture, what does this patch really mean for Cronos: The New Dawn?